The UK is changing, and not for the better. There's a darkness spreading, and this isn't just about politics or economics. It's about the slow erosion of freedoms, privacy, and God-given rights that we were all born with. And it all starts with the implementation of a digital ID.
Your papers, please.
The Digital ID is a system that has been very quietly introduced, wrapped in promises of safety and convenience. But underneath, it's a very, very dangerous tool.
So let's talk about it. What actually is this Digital ID that is being implemented now? And I've made a lot of notes and I'm gonna just read them to you. So apparently it's being implemented for employment purposes. And this is a quote from Keir Starmer. It's meant to stop illegal migrants from disappearing into the shadow economy. But make no mistakes, this Digital ID has actually been discussed in the UK since 2002 under Tony Blair, which then was scrapped in 2010 because it was deemed as being too intrusive. Now in 2014, it was reintroduced again as a voluntary system that was called gov.uk Verify, but this system as well was then largely abandoned because of technical issues and low adoption rates. But what actually is the Digital ID that is supposed to be implemented right now, and what services should it include as it starts to be being used in the UK? Now, vital government services are supposed to be included in the Digital ID, such as healthcare, e.g. vaccinations, hospital services and so on, taxes, benefits, welfare, identity and documentation, so everything when it comes to passports, driving licenses and so on, employment and business, the ability to rent property, criminal records, voting registrations, and much more.
Centralizing your entire life onto one ID database isn't just risky and naive, it's blatantly arrogant. Just think about the consequences of this. A government being able to access literally everything that you do. Your spending patterns, for example. If you were someone who donated some money to the truckers in Canada during the pandemic in 2020, they will know where that money went and they'll know it left your account and went to certain causes. If you're someone who gives money to a certain political affiliate or a political party, they will know and they will be able to understand all of these things about you. If you post something on social media or you use social media in any way wrongly, in their eyes wrongly, they will know. If you buy too much petrol, they will know. All of these things will be easily traceable and trackable. Not to mention, you will have one massive database filled with the centralized IDs of an entire country on this database that will be a one massive target that malicious hackers can then go after. Just think about how many bank accounts were leaked through email leaks and all of the other good stuff that has happened all throughout just the last few years, literally all over the world. It was only actually the other day that over 85 million bank accounts in Vietnam were frozen because they didn't meet the biometric standards that Vietnam had set out for those bank accounts. If that happens in the UK, can you imagine the carnage? 80 million bank accounts. If you don't meet the biometric standard, your life comes to a stop. And that is a very dangerous precedent to set in a so-called free country. Not to mention, has anyone thought that we have an elderly population? My own grandfather is 87 years old. He doesn't even use a smartphone. He uses an old Nokia push-button phone. How are people that are in that age bracket supposed to survive with something like this? How are they supposed to get through their day-to-day if they're going to an airport, for example, and you need your digital ID to board your flight, or you need your digital ID to book the flight, or you need your digital ID to buy a fresh apple pie from the bakery, from the corner shop where he's been going to for the last 35 years. Alongside that, you have homeless people. How are you supposed to give a fiver to a homeless person? Give a tenner to a homeless person? How are you supposed to support those people in any way? How are you supposed to make sure that those people are not just completely left to the side and completely forgotten about? All of the working class people in England that are, for example, could be on benefits. How are these people supposed to survive if they're not willing to sign their entire life away onto this database? If you say no to this, what's going to happen? If you're not comfortable with the implementation of this, what will be the repercussions on your life? And I think that this is an incredibly important thing that needs to be raised. We have many different categories of people in these countries in Europe, and we need to look at how all of them will be individually affected by this blatant disregard of privacy and freedom.
Just to give you a little bit of an example of a situation where these digital IDs can be taken too far. As many of you potentially know, we traveled China several times over the last 2 years. I believe 4 or 5 times we've been to China. And the whole situation with the digital ID, WeChat, Alipay, and so on has really been taken too far. And I just want to give you 2 examples where Luke and I actually had real life issues because we were not 100% compliant with the WeChat, or just general technical issues that arose while traveling, which you really didn't think about beforehand. For example, we had booked a trip to Xi'an, I believe it was, in China, and we wanted to check into our hotel. Now, this was our 3rd trip probably to China, so every time that we arrived, we had gotten different phone numbers. But the WeChat account that I had was registered to the very first phone number, which of course I didn't have access to anymore because, you know, we're not we're a little bit chaotic people. So anyway, I didn't have access to that phone number. We tried to check into the hotel, and I was only able to verify who I am by getting an SMS notification, which then resulted in the hotel wanting to refuse us the ability to check into our hotel because we were incapable of receiving a text message. That's absolutely insane. Then the second example that I have for you is we were trying to pay in a shop with said WeChat account, and WeChat had deemed the transaction to be fraudulent. We were just trying to buy, I believe it was like a little bit of milk and a little bit of bread for dinner or something like that. Anyway, WeChat had deemed the transaction to be fraudulent, and as a result of this had locked us out of our own WeChat account without the capability of actually getting back into it unless you would call them and then verify your personality, your identification, and so on. Now, that had its own issues because obviously we don't speak Chinese and it was a little bit of a difficult situation, but just spin this a little bit further for your own personal life. You're going to the shop, I don't know, you're going to the market, you're trying to buy a kilogram of apples, and then the government is like, hold on, this transaction is fraudulent, and then you're not able to buy food for yourself because the government has a different idea of what you're supposed to be doing in that situation. And we're not saying that this digital ID immediately is going to be including QR code payments, banking, and so on, but these types of situations with the government are usually spun slowly, and without people really recognizing the patterns over years, to be like taking over more parts of your life. Because in the beginning you gave up a small part of your life, such as my tax ID is going to be stored digitally or whatever, and then in 10 years you're going to end up not being able to buy a kilogram of apples in the market. And that's really not where you want to be taking your life to.
Another thing that I really want to touch upon here, because this is something that has been quite literally destroying Europe and destroying the West now for quite a long time. God has been completely removed from society. We are now, as humans, starting to learn and be told that we must place the government above all else. Where do we get our moral compass from? Where do we get our moral standards from? Morality, the idea of morality, the idea of rights in the first place, comes from God. You are born with God-given rights to freedom of expression, to the ability to express yourself, to the right to have property, to a bunch of other things that are not umbrellaed over by a government of people that have more money and more economic control than you. You need to also be able to look at the money, because one of the most important things when you're trying to understand a situation is you have to follow the line of money. And these digital ID systems that are being implemented across the world, they're being heavily financed by private companies. It's not just a public government feel good, this is for the public type of a hippie thing where we're doing it for the benefit of you. No, this is an incredibly lucrative situation. Think about it. All throughout history, one of the most valuable things in the world was gold. Gold has been an incredibly valuable commodity. Another valuable thing has been oil, the ability of machinery, being able to use vehicles to get around, planes, trains, automobiles, all of that good stuff. Oil became incredibly lucrative and valuable, which is why private financial institutions alongside governments literally go to war over gold and oil throughout history. The new gold and the new oil is your data. Being able to access your data, being able to understand everything about the human beings that are in the countries where they're living. Just imagine how valuable that is to a tech company. It's literally it's worth infinite amount of times more than any amount of gold. Because if they have access to you, to your neighbor, to their family, to their family's family, if they have access to all of the information about them, they will know exactly when and where to place different advertisements. They'll know exactly how to manipulate your life in a way that you will need certain things. They will know everything from start to finish about you. Some of the private companies, there's over 50 companies that have been certified under the DIATF. Now I have no idea what that means, but this is the Digital ID something or other. There's private sector companies and over 50 of them are included. Yachty Limited, a leading digital identity provider offering services like Yachty Digital ID. One ID Limited provides document-free customer verification services. GB Group PLC offers identity verification solutions such as identity. The list goes on, there's another 40 something names of private companies. Why would these people be getting involved if the idea behind this ID was just simply for the betterment and for making life easier and smoother and less troublesome for people? There's profit involved. The same reason with everything from 2020 onwards with the pandemic, people said, oh, it's for free, just take it. There's massive profit involved. Billions of euro were made during the pandemic, and billions of euro is to be made off of these digital IDs. Don't fool yourself into thinking that the government just wants what's best for everybody. If that was the case, wouldn't everybody be healthy? Wouldn't everybody have a thriving life? Wouldn't everybody have a happy and strong family? Wouldn't everybody be able to afford to live? That's not the case. So it's very obvious that that's not the intention. The intention is to make as much money off of your data as is physically possible, and to put themselves above where you are and make that gap between them and you just that much bigger. So when it comes time, or when you eventually realize what's going on, it's far too late. The whole reason why we made this video is because we feel it's very, very important. We genuinely are making it as well out of honest concern about the situation. Because we see what's happening, we see what's happening across Europe and in the West in general, and to be honest, around the entire world. And we're really just doing this to try and start a conversation around these types of things, because if we don't talk about things, how are we supposed to learn about these types of situations? How are we supposed to understand them? And regardless of what your opinion is, we want to hear it. So please drop a comment down below and start the conversation, because this is a very, very important topic about the history, or the future, sorry, of the UK and of a lot of Europe and probably America and Australia and many other countries.
Yeah, we also wanted to make this video in order to actually raise the topic, because we kind of felt like it slipped through the gaps a little bit and it wasn't really talked about at all, and all of a sudden it was approved and now you guys have the digital ID. So let's just talk about it and see what everybody thinks about it. God bless you.
Christ is King. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye bye.